As you've probably heard by now, we've teamed up with BetMGM this season. We'll be using BetMGM lines to make all of our picks, and we'll have special offers for our listeners each week. If you haven't signed up for BetMGM yet, use bonus code The Athletic, and you'll get a 1-year subscription to The Athletic, plus up to a $1,500 first bet offer on your first wager with BetMGM. Here's how it works. Download the BetMGM app and sign up using bonus code The Athletic. Make your first deposit of at least $10. Place your first bet on any game and claim your voucher for a 1-year subscription to The Athletic. See BetMGM.com for terms. U.S. promotional offers not available in D.C., Mississippi, New York, Nevada, Ontario, or Puerto Rico. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Available in the U.S. Call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369 in New York. Call 1-800-NEXT-STEP in Arizona. 1-800-327-5050 in Massachusetts. 1-800-BETS-OFF in Iowa. 1-800-270-7117 for confidential help in Michigan. 1-800-981-0023 in Puerto Rico. First bet offer for new customers only in partnership with Kansas Crossing Casino and Hotel. Don't forget, if you haven't signed up for BetMGM yet, use bonus code The Athletic, and you'll get a 1-year subscription to The Athletic, plus up to a $1,500 first bet offer on your first wager.
This podcast is supported by Progressive, a leader in RV insurance. RVs are for sharing adventures with family, friends, and even your pets. So if you bring your cats and dogs along for the ride, you'll want Progressive RV insurance. They protect your cats and dogs like family by offering up to $1,000 in optional coverage for vet bills in case of an RV accident, making it a great companion for the responsible pet owner who loves to travel. See Progressive's other benefits and more when you quote RV insurance at Progressive.com today. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Pet injury is an additional coverage and subject to policy terms.
Hey all, I'm Jamie Lynn Sigler, a mom, actor, and advocate. I know how overwhelming it can be trying to decide which treatment is right for you. I've been there. But you should know you're not alone. You can do this. Start with some research, talk to the community, and most importantly, don't be afraid to ask your doctor questions. You might find results that speak for themselves. That's how I landed on Kesimpta. Ask your doctor if Kesimpta, ofatumumab, could be right for you. You can check out the details at kesimpta.com.
The Athletic.
No time to celebrate or time to rest after the Spanish Grand Prix, because the MotoGP field was straight back in action at Jerez on Monday for the first in-season test of 2025. So we thought on the Race MotoGP podcast we'd bring you a special second half of the episode after the test. But it very nearly didn't happen, because Simon, who's with me, Matt Beer, is still in Spain, and you may have read or seen that there's not been a lot of electricity in Spain or Portugal during the course of Monday. So, Simon, you have made it to your hotel on your way home, but you don't have much electricity or lighting or really anything, do you?
I mean, I feel like I've managed to make the lighting work pretty well, and we have internet. I'm much, much more angry about the lack of food. Because the hotel wanted to charge me the full €30 set menu price for only sandwiches, and I refused to pay it. So I've had a bag of crisps and a sandwich at like 10 a.m. this morning.
Which is now 12 hours ago at the time.
Yes, it is.
We're recording this, during which time you've done 20 rider debriefs and driven across
water,
Spain.
So that's nice.
That's good.
Room temperature, obviously.
Oh, well, we'll attempt to bring you the best podcast we can in the circumstances, but I know from experience that both Simon and Val, who's not around tonight, are at their best when exhausted. So this will be absolutely fine.
Oh, I'm definitely exhausted.
I have to say as well, listeners, I gave Simon so many chances tonight as he was explaining his situation and his makeshift setup to go, let's just record when you're back at home with electricity and internet on Wednesday. The listeners won't mind, but Simon was absolutely adamant we were getting this done. So we are here. We're on camera. This should be going on our YouTube channel as well as appearing in the podcast feeds, and we will do our best.
It's mainly do a podcast and Stacey and go downstairs and murder someone because I'm so hungry. So it's like a distraction process, you know.
So we're saving the lives of hotel receptionists. Let's get going with the topics. So we've got some leftover race topics that we thought we'd get into once we'd seen the test day unfold as well. We are going to start with the factory Ducati team, because this was the test where we thought we'd start to see bits of the kind of almost mythical Ducati GP25 reappearing. And then at the end of the test, Simon, Marquez and Pecco and Bagnaia come to chat, and they haven't been trying. The new engine was always gone. Homologation rules mean the engine, once they decided not to go ahead with that was in the bin basically. But we thought we'd see the 2025 frame reappear at this test originally, didn't we? And it hasn't.
No, it hasn't, and no one really seems to understand why. Like, this was their day. I think maybe the reason it's not here, like, to give them a little bit of credit, is because they're kind of so lost, especially Pecco, with this current bike, what they have right now. And I mean, Marquez as well, because he's crashed out of 2 races now with kind of similar woes. Especially, crashing Sunday's race, very similar to the kind of mistakes we've seen from Pecco and the problems he's having. So I understand why the priority right now is let's fix what this thing is, and figure out why it's not working compared to the very, very similar bike from last year that worked like stupendously well, where the fault is. And they seem to they were very cryptic about what exactly they did spend today doing, but they kind of both alluded that there was a lot of time spent working on electronics.
Yeah.
Which kind of makes sense if they're trying to do something with maybe how the power is being delivered or something like that, because it doesn't seem like it's, there's other manufacturers that we'll come to in due course who have a problem and who brought new parts to fix it because it makes sense that those new parts are going to fix it. Whereas this Ducati issue where, they're not quite getting the front feeling that they want in the second corner entry, and it gets worse when they're following other bikes. It's a bit kind of amorphous. It's a bit hard to nail to the wall where it's coming from and what's causing it on a bike that, in theory, should be pretty much identical to the one that they had last year, because we know it's the same frame, we know it's the same engine, we know that they can switch swing arms pretty quickly, so they've at least tried the same swing arm, even if the one that they've used or settled on are different. And yeah, there's a little bit of aero difference, but it doesn't seem substantial, which means kind of the first thing they have to do to fix the problems they're having right now is figure out what's causing them before they can go reinventing the wheel by throwing a completely different frame at this bike.
It's been really interesting to listen to the two riders describe this problem as well, because like you say, Marquez has this problem too. He's just riding a lot faster while having the problem and then shunting a bit more, although Pecco's actually quite a shunty season in some ways.
Marc's spending less time behind other people.
Yeah.
I think that's a fundamental part of this. If Pecco was P1 all the time, there'd be less of an issue.
But they're coming at it from like opposite positions in that. So we said on the Sunday night podcast that Marc was going to spend Monday studying the data a little bit, working out why he'd crashed. He didn't get it. And then when he reported back on Monday night, he's like, yeah, I understand it now. I was too fast. I mean, okay, obvious, but he didn't think it was any more than that. He described it basically as, what was his exact line? Too much confidence. I need to be more careful in the future. So he's going over the limit of this bike and it's biting him back, but he's not really understanding where that bite's coming from. Pecco just sounds, I know Pecco's always really thoughtful when he's talking to you and the rest of the media. He rarely gets like verbally excited about stuff, but he sounds lost. He sounds really underconfident. His comments about how Marc can ride around problems and he just can't. The guy's a 2-time world champion.
I mean, Marc riding around problems is an old problem for everyone else on the same bike as him. Cal Crutchlow days of Marc can just ride around problems. And it's why we've always said he's not a great development rider, because he can largely just overcome these issues with natural talent. He is incredibly talented. We all know that, and Pecco included. But that almost makes it more interesting. It adds a bit of weight to what Pecco's saying within Ducati. It's now, as we saw rather spectacularly on Sunday, it's not a Pecco Bagnaia problem anymore. It's now a Ducati GP25 problem, and they're going to have to find some way for both of them to fix it or to get better with it from whatever the cause of it is.
I've only heard what Pecco Bagnaia said at the end of the test. You were there, sat opposite him, looking deep into his soul as usual. To me, it sounded so tentative, talking about things they didn't try because of the wind direction. It sounded defeatist is way too strong. It was a guy on a Monday night talking about a test, but this was a chance. This was a whole day of running with no kind of Q0 stuff to think about to find some solutions, and it just didn't sound like he got very far at all.
So it is worth noting, just on that wind issue, that the wind. I was sitting in my hotel on Sunday night, and like having a glance at my iPhone weather app as I passed it by, and it said warning, severe weather warning, and I was like, no, it's been glorious all week. And there was a severe weather warning for high winds. And Fabio Di Gianantonio said that he crashed because he got hit by a gust of wind.
Okay.
So it was windy.
Yeah, it was an issue.
It was windy. Funnily enough, all the guys that had aero to test loved it because they reckon if the aero works well in windy conditions, it works even better in non-windy conditions. So they were all quite pleased about the forecast.
I mean, yeah, they spent hours and hours in a wind tunnel, so you'd assume that wind is useful.
It's not called a still day tunnel, is it?
No, absolutely not.
But I think Pecco kind of, they sounded like someone who didn't come into the day with a plan.
That's an interesting take.
Who come into the day with a load of things that they wanted to try, and that might be the solution. Because I mean, we've seen this before with Pecco, haven't we? Where he just does a load of laps. They take all the data away. They crunch all the numbers. Someone inside Ducati has an aha moment, and then he wins the next 4 races. So it could be that all they needed to do today was to change settings, ride the bike, and gather all that data to kind of see where they're going with it, see where they're at, try and, maybe there's something in all the data that they've gathered today that identifies exactly what the problem is with the bike, and that fixes everything that they're struggling with. Or maybe it doesn't and they've wasted a test day. But it's going to be kind of Le Mans before we see that now, isn't it? Before we figure it out.
Yeah, and even there, his vibe on Monday night was, if it's sunny at Le Mans, I can try some more of these things. If it's at all dicey,
it's not always sunny at Le Mans.
No, yeah, exactly. I feel like after every race, the comments in the Race Members Club on Patreon this year have been, fairly bemused by Pecco Bagnaia's relative struggles, and it was Alex Marquez's win this week kind of brought them all up a notch. There were a few people just saying, would Alex be doing a better job on that bike than Pecco? Quite a few people going, should Ducati be regretting keeping Pecco, not dropping him for Jorge Martin, having a complete clear out? I get that. I get why you're shaking your head, but I also get where the members are coming from, because we can't get past the fact that on the bike that should be, for all these issues, should be the fastest thing out there by a mile, he finished 3rd behind a Yamaha on Sunday.
I still maintain that it's not it's not the best bike in the world. The best bike in the world is Alex Marquez's.
Yeah, okay.
The GP24 at this point is pretty obviously better because it's the final package, and he did do absolutely nothing today in terms of development. Really, he just rode his bike.
Yeah.
Surprisingly, because if I was him, I'd be in my hotel room or my motorhome really hungover. So fair play to Alex for that. But there wasn't much development work to be done on that bike because of where it's at. I think that maybe there's an element of Pecco's race on Sunday that was determined by watching Marc Marquez fall off. I think maybe if he's having these issues and thinks that he doesn't have enough front tire confidence, then nothing is going to calm you down even more than seeing the guy that is the fastest rider in the world around left-hand corners fall off through a left-hand corner because he's having the same problems as you. And there might have been an element, he should have been able to beat Fabio. He should have been able to beat Quartararo. But I wonder, was there just an element of him that thought, I could crash trying to beat him, and Marc's in the gravel, and there is a championship to play for. And you know what? The championship situation is not really terrible for Pecco.
It really isn't.
Even after a terrible start to the season relative to, Marc and Alex.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
I don't want to be too harsh. I don't think there's any point so far this year where I've thought Bagnaia is really doing well enough for the position he's in with that ride as a double world champion. Someone who could have more than 2 world championships, with a few fewer mistakes. So I get why he sees Marc crash. And
but also I think if Marc was not there, Pecco would be closer to the championship lead and in a much more comfortable position. And I think we kind of have to reframe the narrative a little bit back to like Danny Pedrosa in 2018, where your teammate is Marc Marquez, and that that is a terrible metric to be measured against.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. There's still the thing that makes me not lose faith in what Bagnaia is doing at the moment is because we saw so many. This could be a very long Friday, basically. All those Bagnaia Fridays where it's like, oh, he's nowhere. What's going on? Why is he 16th? Gosh, he might end up in Q1. He sounds totally baffled. Oh, he's clicked. It's fine. There he is, disappearing into the distance again. And this could be a 5-month-long Friday, and then it's fine. And if Marc crashes enough during his long Friday, he's still got a title shot.
Exactly. And like, how many times have we seen Pecco have a click and then win, like I said, win 4 races?
He hasn't had to beat Marc Marquez in the same team.
No, 100%. 100%. And that does change it, because Marc is, at the minute, like, he's back to being the best rider in the world by a margin. And this will be, if Pecco somehow wins this championship, it'll be Marc with no one to blame but himself.
Yeah.
That's like with no ill will in the world to Pecco, because I know I'm bigging him up here and everything. Like, he's not going to win this championship if it's a straight fight between him and Marc where they finish every week. We've already seen that.
We know that now, don't we?
We know that he can beat Alex, because I still don't think that the Alex hype train is going to maintain its momentum. Just because I think the bike is going to start to lag. They always do. I mean, in normal years, that always happens. Something's just very loudly beeped in my room, and a very large spider has just climbed up the wall.
The beep was actually in my house that has electricity. That was one of my domestic appliances making a very loud noise, and it scared your spider. So,
I thought that was here. So
I can understand you being. If producer Johnny hears that beep in the background, feel free to leave it in, because we've now made it into a prop, basically. There it is again.
There it is again. I can hear something beeping like 3 rooms away that's going to be really annoying when I'm trying to sleep, because it's obviously something that doesn't have power that should have. So that's the next challenge I'm going to face today.
Yeah. My last point on the Works Ducati situation, again, this comes back to a lot of the kind of general vibe of the members club chat as well. Do you see a situation where Ducati hierarchy do or have already lost a bit of faith in Bagnaia? I cannot see Ducati kicking Bagnaia out, but the Pedrosa zone is like a weird version of the friend zone in an attempt to start a relationship, isn't it? It's you're not where you want to be in your employer's priorities, basically.
If Ducati were going to lose faith in Pecco Bagnaia, it would probably have been when he got beaten to the title by a satellite bike last year, not whenever his teammate, who everyone expected to beat him this year, is beating him. I think whatever damage he could do to his Ducati CV is done already, and I don't think it is done. I don't think there was any. Yeah. I think that Ducati kind of played a fairly straight fight till the end last year, and conceded that Martin won it because Pecco crashed too much, and now they're looking at Pecco, who they know is this very sensitive rider. They're now looking at him and thinking, you can't really judge him too hard for struggling a little bit not to find that feeling. The other thing is that the GP24 was the best bike in the world, and probably still is. Under the development of Pecco Bagnaia.
Yeah,
and Gigi Dall'Igna is a clever guy who knows that Marc is riding around whatever problems there might be right now, and if anything, that probably draws Pecco even a little bit closer to him, because Fabio Di Gianantonio is not doing a lot of development work for them, being the 6th Ducati out of 6 on the new, you know what I mean?
Yeah, indeed. Yeah.
So if anything, actually, Gigi might be appreciating his Pecco a little bit more than ever at the minute.
Hey all, I'm Jamie Lynn Sigler, a mom, actor, and advocate. I know how overwhelming it can be trying to decide which treatment is right for you. I've been there, but you should know you're not alone. You can do this. Start with some research, talk to the community, and most importantly, don't be afraid to ask your doctor questions. You might find results that speak for themselves. That's how I landed on Kesimpta. Ask your doctor if Kesimpta, ofatumumab, could be right for you. You can check out the details at kesimpta.com.
Acura's all-new ADX, a compact SUV that isn't just built for one thing. It's precision crafted for everything. To escape the grind with available all-wheel drive. To go with your flow with available Google built-in.
Hey Google, turn it up.
Okay, turning up the volume. And crafted to be heard with an available Bang & Olufsen premium sound system. The all-new Acura ADX, crafted to match your energy. Acura, precision crafted performance.
Take your vibes and go, 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 go.
Google is a trademark of Google LLC.
Hey, it's Noah Chestnut from The Athletic. If you're into games and sports, pay attention. I'm going to give you 4 sports terms. You tell me the common thread. Ready? Axle, loop, Lutz, Salchow. That's axle, loop, Lutz, Salchow. This one's like medium hard. The answer is figure skating jumps. Now, what if I gave you 16 different terms and you figure out how they come together into 4 different groups? If you're up for the challenge, you'll want to check out Connections Sports Edition. It's a new daily game for sports fans. There'll be some that are going to stump you, some that make you laugh, and some that remind you when you were a kid watching sports for the first time. Connections Sports Edition. To play today's puzzle, go to theathletic.com/connections.
You'll have noticed it's just the 2 of us again. In fact, the 3 of us aren't crossing paths much in recent episodes. That's not because we've fallen out, because I just don't see that happening. You know, we all know the score with each other. We're not that similar, but it works. But it's the volume of stuff we're trying to do across the videos, across the podcast, across the amount of travel with me and Val being on and off F1 as well. We're actually doing a few more two-handers because actually we can get through more stuff, get more stuff out to you, more members exclusives. That way it just makes logistics a bit more straightforward. We will all reconvene in the same recording studio at some point again, I promise. However, Val is not completely absent from this episode because he is now responsible for the rider rankings. And as part of that, he does a little debrief on Patreon. I wish we'd had this last year when they were your job, Simon, because it would have just been like verbal violence, basically. But Val takes your questions in the Race Members Club on Patreon. And those questions this week were mostly like, not abuse. Some of it was a little bit of friendly abuse, to be honest.
Should be.
Yeah. On the weekend that Alex Marquez won his first Grand Prix, on the weekend that Fabio Quartararo put a Yamaha on pole and led nearly half a Grand Prix with it, Val put Maverick Vinales top of his rankings, which got a lot of raised eyebrows from the Race Members Club. So here, from an excerpt from Val's full debrief, which you could, if you join the Members Club already in there, it's on there already. There's a half-hour video of Val going through his thoughts. He's not even that tangenty this week. He's laser-focused. Here is Val explaining why he ranked Maverick Vinales as the star of the Jerez weekend.
He started the season 3rd or 4th best KTM, right? So he was really struggling over a single lap. He was really seemingly struggling to put weekends together, to put races together. Clearly, adaptation from one bike to another in modern MotoGP isn't easy. Some riders do it better than others. I think Jack Miller is a really good positive example of a rider who really excels at it. I don't necessarily think Maverick Vinales is right now, but that doesn't really come into it. But it's weekend number 5. KTM has really good riders in its roster. Really, really good. And at Jerez, he had them all taken care of. At Jerez, he had a mechanical problem that denied him a ticket in Q2 on Friday. So he did it the hard way on Saturday. Then on Saturday, he outqualified Pedro Acosta. He was the best of the non-Ducatis in the sprint. He was 4th in the main race. He was borderline in the podium battle. I never really believed he was going to overtake Pecco Bagnaia particularly, but he was in the conversation. I think obviously second is, the difference between second and 4th isn't just 2 positions necessarily. The difference in perceptions is monumental. And I understand that. I'm not going to pretend like, it's just plus minus 2. I don't feel that way. The gap between Fabio and Maverick at the finish there, not massive, but again, I'm not being obtuse. I understand what all of you mean. And I completely get it. But the sprint thing offsets it a little bit. And if you just pretend for a second, and obviously that's not how MotoGP is, but pretend for a second none of the Ducatis are there, right? Or pretend for a second that every non-Marc Ducati, because I think Marc would also be winning on other bikes, but I'm less confident about the other riders in the roster. But pretend all the other non-Marc Ducatis are all on other bikes and maybe performing middle of the road or slightly better. But you take the race results. Fabio didn't finish the sprint. Maverick was the best in the sprint of the non-Ducatis. Then Maverick was the second best of the non-Ducatis in the Grand Prix. For me, that's a lot. That's a really good weekend.
Okay, so I did suggest that we might have to mock Val in his absence. Simon, you corrected me and pointed out we often mock Val in his presence as well. Yes, so we're really not doing anything too different. What did you make of his line of argument for putting Maverick Vinales top of his rankings for the Jerez weekend?
I mean, I get it. I understand where he's coming from, the whole, best of the rest thing. but I still don't think it kind of, it's not enough to tip Maverick past Alex Marquez actually being sensible.
Yeah, eventually after that first lap.
All three of us, you, me, and Val, in a group chat, spent the second half of the race being like, so he's burnt out his tires, right?
Yes. Yeah, totally.
starting from the moment where he did the most Alex Marquez-y thing ever and almost took out his brother and Pecco. And then kind of rode a furious race for 6 laps that were like, nope, it's done. He's burned out his tires. So for me, I think there's an argument for Alex to be number one. But I kind of get what Val was coming from, because Maverick Vinales has made Pedro Acosta look very small right now.
So this is the key element for me with this. And this is why I think if Quartararo hadn't crashed in the sprint, I don't think there's any arguing Quartararo is number one, not just of Val's rankings for this weekend, but the universe's rankings for this weekend. But Fabio...
He won the very first ever MotoGP fan rider vote.
Yes, he did, didn't he? And rightly so. Yeah, no argument there. But I think Fabio disqualifying himself from Val's top spot with that shunt on Saturday, when that happens, I can see the Maverick Vinales argument. And the big reason for that is the intra-KTM comparison, because it feels like about 3 weeks ago, because it was, when both Tech 3 riders were completely lost and we were laughing at Tech 3 for having signed 2 unadaptable riders who couldn't transfer bikes without bringing all their problems with them. In the space of 2 races, Qatar was completely out of the blue. He then sustained it at Jerez. Not like sustaining the lead challenge, but Maverick Vinales was by far the best KTM. Wasn't a straightforward weekend for him technically, as Val pointed out. 4th was a massively impressive performance on that bike on this circuit, and most importantly, quite a way ahead of not just Brad Binder, not just Nea Bastianini, but KTM and everybody else's great hope, Pedro Acosta. And we've had loads of people in the members club, Alan AG, Johnny W. The list goes on and on, going, basically, have we overhyped Acosta? Should Vinales make us rethink everything we thought about Acosta? Simon?
No, because I'm pretty sure that Pedro Acosta's kind of phoning it in at the minute.
Okay.
I think there's a lot going on. We know that he's talking to Ducati about options. Or we're pretty sure of it. Ducati certainly, VR46 certainly like telling everyone that, or hinting to everyone that they are. Although I don't think that's quite the case in terms of, of basically their ability to buy him out of a contract, which is now impossible. A rider manager made a very good point to me at the weekend that there's 3 ways you leave a contract. Basically, you get sacked, you come to a mutual agreement, or it ends up in court. And no one has taken it to court to sue their rider to ride a bike he doesn't want to ride, because then he really is
never ends well.
Yeah. So that essentially means they have to come to a gentleman's agreement if they want to get rid of him. That involves a lot of money that I don't think VR46 has. In fact, I'm almost certain that Valentino Rossi has it, but doesn't want to spend it because it's his money and not the team's. So I can't see it, especially for 1 year.
Of course, yeah.
His contract ends at the end of next year anyway. There is a rumor that Honda do, but then it seems like Acosta doesn't want to go to Honda because he wants to go ride a finished project. And he there's obviously all that is going on at the weekend. He was quite clever in his kind of Pedro Acosta way at the weekend. Someone asked him about it in a debrief, and he just kind of went and tapped the KTM and his logo on his shirt and said it's on the left over the heart.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So I think that he's still kind of tied to KTM, but I think that he's only tied to them for 1 year unless they build him a very, very good 850 bike that appears sometime next year, because no one can really afford to get rid of him, and it looks like Honda have kind of given up a little bit, maybe on the hopes of getting him. So I think that that's all a distraction, and I think that he's maybe just not where he needs to be with his head in terms of giving it his all every weekend. And I think it'll come back because he's young and full of piss and vinegar, and you know what I mean. He'll find it again.
He didn't. I don't think from his media debriefs over the weekend he sounded particularly angry or frustrated compared to some other races this year when he has.
I kind of asked him a bit of a, I don't want to call it a loaded question because I didn't mean it that way, but kind of a, I asked him on Sunday, like, is Maverick being so far ahead of you? Like, is that a worry or is it that a good thing because it shows the bike is? And he was like, he didn't even have to think about it. He was super positive, like, no, it's a good thing. It shows where we're aiming for. It shows the target. It shows that the bike can actually mix it up with the Ducatis if we get it right. So, I mean, there's someone that there's someone that needed the test more than anyone to try and fix the myriad of problems that they have at the minute that Maverick doesn't seem to have.
This week.
Yeah.
Because it's Maverick.
Very much so. But it may be that today was what he kind of needed to reset his head a little bit, and Maverick being where he is probably isn't a bad thing.
I mean,
kind of, yeah.
Maverick will always show you the ultimate potential of your bike a few times, won't he? It's the other bits.
Yeah.
And we've established a lot of Acosta as a strong student of MotoGP history, so he will be aware that Maverick Vinales peaks 4 or 5 times a year and might not be a problem to you in the intra-team battle the rest of the time. That said, as much as I'm being down on Maverick, like Val pointed out in his rankings debrief, we were saying middle of last year, KTM has the most strength in depth of any of the manufacturers. It's got a really strong overall lineup for all their kind of individual mini flaws. There's 2 races in a row where Maverick has looked head and shoulders above the other KTMs. And actually, as much as I mock the inconsistency and stuff, at his best, that guy is so impressive. And it is really good, really satisfying to see it so early in his time at KTM.
I mean, yeah, it's somehow all managing to come together. How weird is that? Like, it's working. I thought this adaptation process was going to take so much longer. But I think maybe the reason that we thought that this was going to take so much longer is because we had our metric was a bit skewed, because the only other time we've seen him change bikes and take forever to do it was going from an inline to a V. And actually, whenever you look back at him going from an inline to an inline from Suzuki to Yamaha, he had the quickest adaptation process ever.
Yeah.
And, he did that in like one winter of he did it in one day of testing and topped the first test. He basically went to Valencia, he rode the bike, and then he topped like both tests and won the first 3 of the first 4 races. So that was super short. And then we saw him go from Yamaha to Aprilia, and it took him like 18 months to get it together. But no, he's went from Aprilia to KTM, from a V to a V. And you know what? Actually, it turns out he is pretty good at this stuff, as long as you keep the engine characteristics the same. And he's right back to where he was. So maybe we were a bit harsh on how long that process would take. And he is now definitely making his new teammate in Bastianini look like quite a slow learner.
Yeah. Although all 4 KTMs in the top 10 at the end of Sunday's race, which for a little minute I was like, KTM actually making progress. Then I was thinking, who has crashed? Who is underperforming? Where are there any Aprilias on the grid today? It's not real, is it?
It's also Jerez, which has always been a real KTM circuit. Like Paul had good results at KTM back before he even went to Honda. That was like the first place I ever remember him making the bike shine. Danny stuck it on the podium as a wild card. It's always Brad has a good results. It's always been one of their circuits. So maybe things are a little bit skewed by the fact that we've went from one of Maverick circuits to one of KTM circuits. And both of those things have kind of boosted his level. But it's a bit of, there's a bit of reassurance for the others that they are getting a bit closer. Because, people crashed, but also you have to look at whenever you look at the gap to the leader, the gap to the first Ducati, it's not massive anymore.
No, that's a really good point. I just kind of neglected. I was looking at how high they were up the results and thinking about who was missing, but you're right, the time gaps are encouraging. Okay, so I think we've concluded that Val isn't a complete lunatic. in the end there. If you want to, if you're already in the members club and you're not participating in Val's rankings debriefs yet, please do get involved next time they come out. If any position just makes you go, what on earth is he thinking? Let him know. It's fun. He enjoys replying. For those of you yet to join, already in the members club, also coming up in this gap, we've got one of the spiciest races of 2015 in the next episode of 2015 Revisited on Friday. It's Assen. Everyone always thinks of Sepang. That wasn't the only time Marquez and Valentino Rossi tripped over each other. It happened a lot. Assen, no spoilers, but also a spoiler, is the next big one. And we've also got Simon, you and Megan are doing a series of specials on the Isle of Man TT in the build-up and through the event as well. You've got a lovely interview with Paul Phillips, the TT's head of motorsport, with so many good tales about how to create that event and what this year's TT is going to involve. That'll be available in full in the members club. We'll drop a teaser into the main feed as well, but may as well do a little mini tease right now, Simon. The TT and road racing is massively close to your heart, so you've loved the fact to let you just talk about it a lot more this year.
Absolutely loving it, and going for like 10 days, which is even better because it's just the best thing in the world. Every motorbike racing fan has to go to the TT once. That's my argument. And really nice to catch up with Paul, who I've known for a very long time. Paul was the editor of the first ever website I wrote for.
Yes.
In like 2002. So we've known each other a very long time. It was really good to get him on the podcast. He's so knowledgeable about not just the history and the sporting side of the TT, but like all of the stuff that goes into everything from recruiting world-class talent to putting on a race that's 40 miles, 70 kilometers long. And doing it all as a government department, which, highs and lows to that. But yeah, brilliant. Really enjoyed the chat with him. Really, really pleased to be able to use that as a bit of a way to try and introduce TT to some people maybe that have never really paid too much attention to it before, because you are going to get a lot of it this year, trust me.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think this is what we're really aiming for with the TT coverage we're doing in the members club and in the main feed this year. We want, if you're already a massive TT fan and know everything about it, and you and Megan come into that category, I'd say, hopefully it'll still be enlightening and fun for you. It'll bring it even more alive. If you're just like a MotoGP fan who knows the TT exists, knows that it is cool, it's got its downsides as well, and we don't shy away from discussing the danger element in our coverage of it either, and neither does Paul, in fairness. Some of the tales that he tells, some of the tales that other guests we've got coming up will tell as well, will really kind of open it up to you and make it, hopefully, if we do our job right, hopefully make it more accessible. Because, I mean, for me, I'm not a huge TT person, but I'm in awe of it, but I don't fully understand it, and I hope by the end of our coverage this year that I will. So all that's coming up in the members club and a bit in the main feed, and we have committed as well to doing another Moto2 and Moto3 special at some point during May as well, because there are always so many members' questions each week about what's going on in Moto2 and Moto3, and I know Simon, you and Val will love chance to argue with each other about that, those two series as well. So while Ducati wasn't testing much and KTM probably wasn't testing very much either, the other three manufacturers were all doing some quite interesting stuff at Jerez on Monday. Yamaha, I want to rattle through quite quickly because we do plan to give Yamaha a fair bit more coverage on both our YouTube channel and in the next episode of the podcast before Le Mans, before Fabio Quartararo's glorious homecoming as a rider who might be back on the podium at Le Mans. Simon, new engine. Not a V4 yet, but a new engine at Yamaha, and some good noises coming from both Fabio Quartararo and Alex Rins about it.
I mean, Alex Rins was really, really happy with it, even more so than Fabio. He said they had found like 2 kilometers an hour, which doesn't sound like a whole lot, but it's Jerez, where that actually means quite good improvements in acceleration because it's such a short track or such a short straight. But what he was most impressed with was he somehow managed to translate into that like half a second in extra lap time.
Yeah.
Which proves that it is working on corner exit substantially. It is improving the acceleration. It has to be because that's where they've been losing so much time. Both him and Quartararo are going to have it next race in Le Mans, which they can do because they have concession status. And it just sounds like, good, solid progress in the right direction. It's not a game changer. It's not a massive thing, but it's good, solid progress towards building a better bike. And I mean, I did think about this at one point over the weekend. Like, it's Yamaha have a bike that's suddenly able to give Quartararo podium aspirations again. And they've just bought a new engine that's faster, which is exactly what he's been looking for. And it was faster, is I think really important. It's faster without changing how it feels in any way, which is something that we've had problems with in the past. So it feels exactly the same, but it's quicker. And they're doing this in the week where their new V4 engine made its first appearance on track with test rider Augusto Fernandez at Valencia, and they're building an 850 bike. So like,
it's a lot, isn't it?
Well, it justifies all of that faith that Quartararo put in them whenever he said he was staying and not going off to ride a satellite Ducati or a factory Aprilia. He's justified. They've justified the faith he put in them. Fair play to them, because that there is a lot going on.
I need to get Yamaha skeptic Val to just chuck in a voice note at this point to like pull us down a bit. But I found Quartararo's debrief on Monday night really interesting, because the phrase he used about the new engine was he wanted the extra performance, but it didn't change the agility. Mm-hmm. And that's the bit that's really been key for him. And like I said, like as you mentioned too, Simon, at Jerez, you barely get to fifth and sixth gear. Fabio said you're in fifth and sixth for so few seconds, you can't really tell if the engine's good. Acceleration out of corners will also help a lot of Le Mans in a fortnight as well. That's another good track for that. Yeah. But towards the end of his debrief, he was like, "We've got too excited about testing this year. The track conditions are good in testing. We don't, we get too carried away." And he's right. We all did after the first test at Sepang after the shakedown. But even though he was trying to tone it down at the end, the first couple of minutes of that media chat were very excited. I felt
the only thing that I kind of listened to that chat and thought about a little bit was he, like you say, he said that it was really important that they maintain the agility of the bike. And part of me wonders, is he going to jump on a V4 and think, oh my God, I hate this?
Yeah.
Because suddenly, he showed on Sunday, suddenly they found the corner speed again. They found what they need to be, they don't need to build an inline 4 that's faster than the Ducatis. They just need, or the KTM, which is actually the fastest bike at the minute in terms of straight line speed in MotoGP. They need to build an inline 4 that's just fast enough that it doesn't get blitzed in the straights. They just need to be able to hold their own. And do you remember Suzuki did that in their final year?
Well, exactly, yeah.
Suzuki had the fastest inline 4 ever. It was right up there in the speed trap times in that, kind of aborted year where everything fell apart for them. And I remember being at preseason testing in Sepang and doing a media scrum with Rins and Mir, and both of them being like, oh my God, the engine is incredible. Yeah. And Sylvain Gintoli was there in the background at the scrums, listening, waiting to tell us, I told you so, after the two riders had finished speaking, because he had done the lion's share of the development on it. And they had built basically a really, really fast inline 4. So it can be done. It can be done. And I'm glad that Yamaha are not putting all their resources into a V4 that is maybe not going to be what Quartararo at all wants when he rides it. It's I think it's worth noting he's never rode a V4. He's never rode anything but a Yamaha inline 4 in MotoGP. Quartararo has only got that experience to go on. Rins has been around a bit. He's rode an inline at Suzuki. He's rode a V4 Honda. He has a little bit more, but not an awful lot more. He's got basically less than half a season because he broke himself in the Honda.
Productive Honda time was so brief, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was one weekend in Coda, let's be honest.
Yeah. A very good weekend, but
a very good weekend, but still, yeah. So I don't know if they're going to be in love with it. Yeah.
On Rins, incidentally, we should give a nod to him because we had a few Patreon questions about just how bad his form was. And he started right at the back of the grid on a day that Quartararo was on pole at Jerez. There was an extra little injury complication here, there wasn't, that did have an impact on his performance.
Yeah, he's been pretty battered all weekend after the big one early on. So even in that, when we spoke to him in testing, they spoke a little bit earlier in the day, kind of at lunchtime, and he was P2 to Fabio at that point, and very, very delighted because it's been a long time since he saw P2 next to his name, and he did it all while like super stiff and sore, and painkilling injections and all sorts, just to kind of. I think he needed painkilling injections for the sprint, but not the main race, but he was still taking painkillers. So kind of a rough weekend for Alex. Yeah. And, this is someone who is still battered and broken.
Well, yeah, this is a wrist thing now, isn't it, from this crash?
A wrist thing and a knee injury on the leg that is still not really functioning properly. So with all that in mind, I mean, good job, well done.
Yeah, the percentage of limbs that he had that were actually doing what they were supposed to was not high at the weekend.
No, it was definitely not 100%. You always want the number of limbs you have functioning to be at 100%.
Yes, yeah, definitely. Speaking of people with new engines, Honda also had a new one, which Joan Mir was sort of cautiously quite chipper about.
I get Joan's point completely that he made. They bought a new engine as well. He really liked it. He thinks there's really something to it. It's, again, like the Yamaha, it feels the same but better. But his concern was that he could finally almost taste success. And he's aware that it's a lot harder to make significant big changes when you're nearly back than it is to make them whenever you're completely and utterly lost. However, considering that he has spent the past month, as he reminds us, texting Romano Abbassiano regularly saying, give me a faster engine, he can't really complain about it, and he is going to have to use it because it seems like he has a faster engine.
Which is just what you need for sliding on your side into a gravel trap 3 times
But he maintains he only slides into the gravel trap on his side because the engine isn't fast enough.
And he's having to overcompensate.
And he's, yeah. So I mean, the maybe Abbassiano is just like, devoted all of Honda's efforts. Like the F1 project is struggling right now because they've built Mir a faster engine just to shut him up,
Yeah, we've said enough about Joan Mir crashing this year. I think the notable thing will be when he doesn't, and then proves us wrong. Proves that it always was about having to overcompensate under braking to make up for not having the straight line speed. He is crashing out of better positions. If you're watching this on YouTube, I hope producer Rob leaves in the massive yawn Simon just did. No, you don't. In the circumstances of your situation tonight, you are allowed that. Let's hit the last manufacturer so you can. I was going to say, well, you can't get any food. There's no food. You can at least sleep well. There'll be no electricity. Oh, there's beeping things due to electricity.
No, I can't even do that.
We just need to keep talking all night until you fly out of Spain.
Pretty much, or until I fall asleep. Yeah.
Aprilia.
Yes.
Aero testing at Aprilia on Monday. Now, also, the interesting thing about this, Aprilia, brilliant press service in messaging you all first thing in the morning with a list of what they're doing.
Glorious. Can you tell that their head of comms used to be a journalist until very recently?
Yeah. Brilliant. More of that, please, teams in all of motorsport. But quite a heavy list of things they were changing. And this is the problem with Aprilia this year with Marco Bezzecchi just... I don't even know how to describe Marco Bezzecchi's start to his time at Aprilia. Ralph Fernandez, disappointing so much. Jorge Martin, just not there. We're judging it all on a rookie on the satellite bike. But so far, the narrative has been the Aprilia is a good bike. It's just not got its best rider fit. 2 of its riders are in trouble. They were changing and developing a lot, it felt like today. And both Bez and Lorenzo Savadori talking about trying to improve stability and actually nail some problems. So is this a bit of an indication that actually the Aprilia isn't as good as we thought it might be? And even if Martin was here, he'd be having a pretty sketchy time.
I think he would. I think that is part of it. But I think the Aprilia are in the happy situation of knowing exactly what the problem is. Their whole issue is this: they've lost a load of their turning stability, which used to be that bike's absolute, like that has been that bike's strength since like 2018. It's always been, whenever everything else was awful and it would only last 4 laps of a race, other riders would come in and say to you that they pretty looked like it was on rails. So that's always been their strength. And that somehow disappeared over winter. And
did Aleix nick it?
Yeah, he's taken it to Honda with him.
The Honda's looking a lot better on that front now, isn't it?
Albiciano have taken that with him to Honda.
Yeah.
But they know what their problem is, and then they're working to fix it. And I think that the big change, the big alteration of the test, they did some aero work, but the big step seems to be that they brought a new carbon swing arm that is designed specifically to try and work with this in whatever way. It could be that it's a bit longer or a bit stiffer or whatever to try and address this problem. And they seemed also like quietly optimistic about it. Bezzecchi was kind of relatively pleased with it. Raul Fernandez was maybe quite surprisingly delighted with his day of testing, because he seems to think he's found something, which we've heard.
Yeah, once or twice.
We've heard more. Yeah. We've heard that more times this year than we've heard the Spanish national anthem. But let's see. And Ayagura was actually just happy to get a day of testing, because he said he didn't actually test during the winter break, during all those days of testing, because he was trying to learn how to be a MotoGP rider.
Of course.
So he was just pleased to actually test something. It seems like Aprilia were throwing new parts at all three of them, plus Lorenzo Savadori, to try and figure stuff out. I think that the swing arm that Bezzecchi tried, Savadori probably raced over the weekend, because he made some noises that kind of suggested that he'd done that. So, there's loads of work going on there. They know what their problem is. They know how they have to fix it. I think they'll probably be a little bit concerned or a little bit aware, maybe, if that's coming from the aero. That's something obviously that you can only fix once, because you can only bring one aero upgrade to address it. So they're trying to work on other ways to get around it, which is essentially exactly what Ducati did like 3 years ago. They built a bike Gigi built the bike that he wanted to build, and then had to come up with weird ways to make it actually go fast. So it's not a terrible idea. And Fabiano Sterlicini, that's leading their development now, kind of learned at Gigi's right hand, so he knows what he's doing.
True. Yeah. No, Aprilia is such a big missing piece in the storyline this season, and I still have so much faith in what Bez can actually do on his best from his peak times, and it would be brilliant even before Martin's back. It'd be nice for Aprilia to look like somewhere that's worth Martin returning to, because it doesn't particularly right now, and that's after everything they've built up to for this heading into this season. That is so sad. But yeah, hopefully everyone who's got some catching up to do had a really productive Monday, and all these little bits add up to a closer and closer field as the year goes on, because actually the field is close. Okay, Aprilia's lost ground, but Honda and Yamaha are moving forward. KTM, against all the odds, is actually turning in some really good race pace.
Right.
If it wasn't the fact that the same bloke basically wins every race or throws it off the road, this would be an incredibly close looking season.
The battle for second in the Constructors' Championship has never been as close.
No.
I haven't actually looked at it post race, but it's like they're all kind of right on top of each other, and it's brilliant. That is not something we've been. Yes, obviously Ducati are dominating, and nobody wants to see that, but like what's going on behind is actually, it's all quite tight, quite entertaining.
So there you go. So now, Simon, when you curl up in bed shortly after the end of this podcast with no food, no electricity, all your equipment run out of battery from recording this podcast and no way to recharge it, just think, it's okay. The battle for second in the Constructors' Championship is really good.
I've actually just gone and pulled up the maths on this to double check that I'm not completely insane. And there's 9 points covering 4 manufacturers.
Yes, that's great.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
Ducati are 123 points ahead, but
we don't have to mention that. Let's leave it there. Our equipment has made it this far. Your hotel room has served you well. Thank you, Simon, for making it through this podcast. Thank you, listeners, for bearing with us. We'll be back next week. Our current plan for the next podcast and video is a big deep dive into what's going on with Yamaha, all these topics around the V4, and a bit about like what makes Quartararo so alien, I think is the only appropriate word. We'll be back in your ears and in your eyes on the YouTube channel with that sometime before Le Mans.
The Athletic.